Baraka didn't cry when her father tore down her Christmas decorations. She didn't cry when he told the guests she was the reason the family never had peace. But the moment he leaned close, stared her dead in the eyes, and whispered, "The best gift you can give this family is to disappear." That was the first time her hands went cold, not from the winter outside, but from realizing her own father meant every word. What he didn't know was that Baraka already had a plan, and her disappearance would expose a truth he never imagined. Baraka had learned long ago to move quietly, to breathe softly, to exist without taking up space. Being the middle child meant she was always in between, never important enough to be noticed, yet always present enough to be blamed. If a cup broke, her father's eyes went straight to her. If money went missing, he shouted her name before checking anywhere else. Even when she wasn't home during an argument, somehow she was still the cause. She carried these accusations like invisible stones on her back, heavy but silent. As Christmas came closer, the house grew louder. Relatives filled the rooms with laughter, music played from the old speakers, and the smell of warm food drifted through the halls. Everyone seemed excited, busy, and connected. But Baraka felt like she was watching life from behind a glass wall. She moved around quietly, doing chores no one thanked her for, making sure not to bump into anyone, hoping just to blend into the background. One afternoon, she gathered the courage to try something small. She picked up a few decorations, simple lights, a ribbon, and a tiny star she had saved money to buy. She wanted the living room to look bright and festive, like the houses she saw in her neighborhood. She wanted her siblings to smile when they walked in. Maybe for once, she could add something beautiful to the home. She had just finished placing the star when her father walked in. His face changed immediately. Without saying a word, he walked past her, grabbed the decorations and pulled them down one by one. The lights fell to the floor. The ribbon tore. The small star she bought rolled under the sofa. Everyone in the room turned to look. Her father didn't stop. He spoke loudly so everyone could hear, saying she was always trying to ruin the house with her unnecessary things. Her cheeks burned as people laughed awkwardly or looked away. No one defended her. No one asked why she wanted to decorate. She stood there, frozen, feeling like the ground had disappeared from under her feet. The warmth in the room no longer felt warm. It felt like a spotlight on her shame. And as her father walked away, muttering about how she always caused problems, Baraka silently wished she could disappear into the walls she spent her life hiding behind. Baraka tried to slip away from the living room after the decorations incident, hoping no one would notice her shaky hands. She moved toward the kitchen, pretending to look for something to do, anything that would make her invisible again. The noise from the dining table carried through the house, relatives laughing, plates clattering, children running around. Everyone continued enjoying the evening like nothing had happened. No one wondered how she felt. No one followed her to check on her. She stood near the counter, trying to calm her breathing, when she suddenly felt her father's presence behind her. He didn't shout this time. He didn't raise his hand or his voice. Instead, he spoke quietly, almost like he was telling her a simple truth. His calmness made it even more frightening. He leaned closer and said, "If you really want to give us a gift this year, disappear." For a second, Baraka thought she must have heard wrong. She slowly turned her head, but he was already straightening up, wiping his hands like nothing important had been said. He didn't look angry. He didn't look emotional. He looked normal, relaxed, like he had just told her to pass the salt. Then he walked away, joining the others at the table, laughing with them, eating with them, joking as if he hadn't just crushed something inside his daughter. Baraka didn't move. Her feet felt glued to the floor. Her hands started trembling again. She wasn't used to kindness from him, but she wasn't prepared for this kind of cruelty either. The sentence he spoke stayed hanging in the air, replaying in her mind over and over, louder than the music and louder than the laughter coming from the dining room. Disappear. The word felt heavy, like someone had dropped a stone straight into her chest. For years, she had tried to earn his approval. She woke up early, did chores before anyone else, stayed quiet to avoid arguments, helped her siblings with homework, cooked meals when no one else wanted to, and always tried to smile even when she felt empty. She kept hoping one day he would look at her differently. Maybe call her by a softer name. Maybe tell her he was proud. Maybe just once treat her like she mattered. But now, standing alone in the kitchen, she saw the truth clearly. No matter what she did, no matter how much she tried, his heart had no place for her. She could spend her whole life trying to be the perfect daughter, and it still wouldn't change a thing. For the first time, Baraka understood that staying in that house meant slowly breaking a little more every day. And his words, spoken so calmly, were the final push that made her see the reality she had been too afraid to accept. Baraka stayed in the kitchen long after her father walked away, holding onto the counter to keep herself steady. The house felt louder than before, but inside her chest everything felt strangely quiet, as if something had gone numb. She slowly walked to her room, closed the door gently, and leaned against it. She knew she couldn't cry because crying always made things worse, but her heart felt heavier than it ever had. For months, Baraka had been quietly planning something. She never told anyone in her house. Every evening after school, she worked at Larado's small cafe on the corner of their street. It wasn't a big place, just a few tables, the smell of warm bread, and soft music, but it was the only place in the world where she felt safe. Larado had been her friend since they were little girls, the kind of friend who noticed when Baraka was hurting even when she forced a smile. She saw how Baraka's father treated her, how she was always blamed, always ignored, always pushed aside. Many times, Larado begged her to leave that house. She would say, "You deserve better, Baraka. You can make your own life. You don't have to stay where you're not loved." But Baraka never believed she was strong enough to walk away. She kept thinking things might change one day. She kept hoping her father would soften. She kept telling herself she could endure a little more. But tonight changed everything. With shaking hands, she knelt beside her bed and reached underneath. She pulled out the small bag she had been slowly packing over the last few weeks. It wasn't much, just a few clothes, her school documents, and the small amount of money she had saved. She had counted each coin carefully, tucking them away and promising herself she wouldn't touch them unless she was truly ready. But there was one more thing in the bag. A white envelope she had never opened. It had her name written in her mother's handwriting, the soft, careful writing she remembered from when she was younger. The envelope had been given to her by one of her mother's friends at the funeral years ago, who said, "Your mother wanted you to have this when you are older." Baraka had kept it safe but never had the courage to read it. Tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the moment her mother had prepared her for. She picked up the envelope gently, feeling the weight of it in her hands. She didn't open it yet, but holding it made her heart feel warmer, stronger, as if her mother was right there beside her. For the first time, Baraka didn't feel trapped. She felt like she had a small doorway opening in front of her, one she finally had the courage to step through. Baraka sat on the edge of her bed, the envelope resting softly in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she ran her thumb along the edge. She had avoided opening it for years, afraid of what it might hold, afraid it would make the pain of losing her mother even sharper. But tonight, after everything her father said, she felt something inside her shift. She needed answers. She needed strength. And she felt this letter might be the only place she could find it. Taking a deep breath, she carefully tore the envelope open. A folded letter slid out, the paper slightly yellowed but still smooth. She unfolded it slowly, her heart beating heavy and slow. The first thing she saw was her mother's handwriting, soft, curved, gentle, exactly as she remembered. "Baraka, my sweet girl," the letter began. Her eyes filled with tears before she even read the next line. It felt like hearing her mother's voice again, like a warm hand holding hers. The letter continued with her mother apologizing for leaving her too soon, apologizing for not being there to protect her, to guide her, to give her the love she deserved every day. Her mother wrote that she knew the house would not be kind to Baraka, that some hearts inside it were too cold to understand her gentle spirit. "I am sorry you will grow up around people who refuse to see your worth," the letter said. "But you are stronger than you think, and I know life will be hard for you in that house. That is why I have prepared something only for you." Baraka wiped her tears and looked down as something else slipped from the envelope, a folded official paper. Her hands shook as she opened it, expecting maybe another letter. But it wasn't that. It was a property deed, a real document with her name written clearly at the top. Confused, she read the words again and again. It didn't make sense at first. Then she saw the address and the description. Her mother had bought a small lakeside cabin. Not for the family, Not for her father. Not for anyone else. It belonged only to Baraka. Her mother had bought it secretly, signed everything quietly, and put it in her daughter's name long before she died. And attached to the deed was a small handwritten note. When you feel like you have no place, this will be yours. Baraka held the paper close to her chest, overwhelmed by the love her mother had left behind. She felt a deep warmth spreading through her heart, stronger than fear, stronger than sadness. For the first time in her life, she had something of her own. Something safe, something full of love, something waiting for her. And for the first time, she understood that she did have a place in this world. A place her mother had built just for her. Baraka waited until the whole house fell silent. The laughter, the noise, the footsteps. All of it slowly faded as relatives went to their rooms and the lights were switched off one by one. She stayed sitting on her bed, listening carefully, making sure everyone was asleep. Her heart was beating fast, but her mind felt clearer than it ever had. Tonight was the night she would finally leave the place that had never felt like home. She stood up quietly and picked up the small bag she had prepared earlier. She packed only what she truly needed: her documents, a few clothes, the money she saved, and her mother's letter and deed. She didn't pack anything extra. Nothing in that house belonged to her emotionally, so nothing felt worth taking. She didn't leave a note on the pillow. She didn't write a goodbye message. In her heart, she knew they wouldn't look for one. They never cared to know her words when she lived there, so she doubted they would care now. Slowly, she opened her door and stepped into the hallway. The house was cold and dark. She walked past her siblings' rooms, praying they would understand her decision one day. She moved down the stairs carefully, avoiding the one step that always creaked. When she reached the front door, she paused for a moment, looking around. For years, she had dreamed of leaving but always feared the consequences. Now, she felt a strange calmness settling inside her. She quietly opened the door and stepped out into the freezing night. The cold air hit her immediately, but she didn't stop. She wrapped her arms around herself and began walking fast down the street toward Lorado's house. The roads were empty, the sky dark, and the wind sharp, but she kept moving. When she finally reached Lorado's gate and gently knocked, the door opened almost instantly. Lorado appeared with worried eyes, but the moment she saw Baraka's bag, she understood everything. Without asking a single question, Lorado pulled her into a tight hug. Baraka felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Lorado grabbed her car keys and said softly, "Let's go." They drove through the quiet night, heading toward the lakeside cabin her mother had left for her. Baraka imagined an old, dusty place, forgotten, empty, maybe even falling apart. But when Lorado unlocked the door and Baraka stepped inside, she stopped in shock. The cabin was fully furnished with clean sheets, warm blankets, stocked shelves, and even a small lamp glowing gently in the corner. It felt lived in, cared for, waiting. Her mother had prepared it long ago, hoping Baraka would one day find it. Baraka stepped inside slowly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she felt what a real home could be. Morning light slowly filled the house, but Baraka was no longer there to see it. Her family woke up one by one, moving around sleepily after the long night. Her siblings got ready for breakfast, and her aunt started heating food in the kitchen. Everything felt normal, until her father walked toward her room. He pushed the door open sharply, ready to call her for chores like he did every morning. But the moment he stepped inside, he stopped. The room looked strangely empty. The bed was neatly made, something Baraka normally did, but today it felt different. He moved closer and pulled open her wardrobe. Most of her clothes were gone. Not all, just the ones she truly needed. He frowned, confused. He checked the drawers next. Empty. Then he saw her phone lying on the bedside table. Baraka never went anywhere without it. For a few seconds he stared at it, feeling a quiet discomfort grow inside him. He told himself it meant nothing, but something inside him tightened. Her siblings came rushing in after hearing him call her name loudly. When they saw the empty room, their eyes filled with fear. They whispered to each other, asking what happened, asking where she could have gone. One of them said, "Did she run away forever?" Another one started crying softly, worried she might be hurt somewhere. Their father, however, forced himself to stay calm. He crossed his arms, pretending he wasn't surprised. He said loudly, "If she left, let her go. She always wanted attention." He tried to sound strong, but his voice shook slightly, as if he didn't fully believe his own words. But the relatives heard the noise and gathered around the doorway. They looked at the empty room, then at him. Whispers started immediately, quiet at first, then growing. Some asked why she left. Some wondered what had happened last night. Someone muttered, "She didn't even take her phone. Something must have pushed her." And then one of the cousins remembered hearing him near the kitchen the night before. The cruel sentence he had said. The words he thought no one had heard. Suddenly the whispers changed. They weren't soft anymore. They weren't confused. They were judging. They looked at the father, not with respect or fear, but with blame. They had always ignored how he treated Baraka, but now her disappearance made everything obvious. The timing was too clear, too painful. He felt heat rise in his face. His ego, the thing he held onto so tightly, began to crack. For the first time, he realized he might have pushed his daughter too far. He might have spoken words that couldn't be taken back. And now everyone knew it. The days in the cabin passed quietly for Baraka. For the first time in her life, nobody shouts her name, nobody calls her useless, and nobody asks her to fix problems she didn't cause. She wakes up to soft light coming through the window, not the noise of arguments. She spends her mornings learning to cook simple meals, using the small kitchen her mother had stocked long ago. She burns some things, laughs at herself, and tries again. Every small success makes her feel a little lighter. She cleans the rooms, arranges the shelves, and sweeps the wooden floor. Each day, the cabin feels less like a stranger's place and more like her own home. In the evenings, she sits by the window watching snow fall slowly over the lake. She wraps herself in a warm blanket and lets her mind relax for the first time in years. The silence feels safe. Healing comes slowly but gently. Lorado visits when she can, bringing groceries, warm food, and soft smiles. They talk for hours about the future, something Baraka never allowed herself to dream about before. But one snowy morning, as Baraka stands near the stove making tea, she hears footsteps outside. They are heavy, steady, not like Lorado's quick steps. She freezes for a moment, wondering if she should hide. Then she hears a knock on the door. Carefully, she walks to it and opens it just a little. Standing there is a man she remembers faintly, a tall, quiet man with tired eyes. It takes her a moment to place him. "Baraka," he says softly. "It's me, Musa, her mother's brother, the uncle who stopped visiting years ago." She opens the door wider, confused and nervous. He steps inside slowly, brushing snow off his coat. The air feels heavier now, not dangerous but full of something unsaid. "I knew you would come here someday," he begins. "Your mother always believed this place would save you when the house became too heavy." Baraka sits down across from him, her hands shaking slightly. He looks at her with deep sadness, like he's been carrying this truth for too long. "There is something you must know," he says quietly. She listens closely. "Your mother did not die from illness," he continues. "That's what your father told everyone. But it is not the full truth." Baraka feels her chest tighten. She grips the edge of the table. "Your mother grew weaker because of years of emotional pain," Musa says. "The constant yelling, the insults, the disrespect, the fear. Your father broke her slowly, piece by piece. Her body couldn't take it anymore." The room suddenly feels colder. Baraka's eyes fill with tears, but she doesn't speak. Musa reaches for her hand gently. "She tried to protect you," he whispers. "And when she realized she might not survive, she made sure you would have a place where his voice could never reach you." Baraka bows her head, overwhelmed by grief, love, and anger all at once. For the first time, she understands why the cabin exists. It wasn't just a gift, it was her mother's final act of protection. Baraka cried until her whole body shook, but in the middle of her pain she understood something clearly. She could not hide anymore. Staying quiet had only protected the people who hurt her, not herself, and definitely not her younger siblings who were still living in that house, scared and voiceless. She wiped her tears with trembling hands and forced herself to breathe. If she wanted things to change, she had to be the one to start it. Her uncle sat beside her, calm but serious, and told her he would help her in every way he could. He explained that the law was on her side, and she didn't have to face her father alone. For the first time in a long while, Baraka felt a small spark of safety. When he said, "We can win this," she believed him a little. Then her mother's old documents were brought out, papers Baraka had forgotten even existed. There were savings her mother had quietly kept aside for her children, medical records that showed old injuries, notes from teachers who had worried about her, and even letters her mother wrote about the mistreatment happening in the house before she died. Baraka held each paper gently, feeling as if her mother was still guiding her, still protecting her. Her uncle helped her organize everything. They took photos, made copies, and arranged every detail carefully. The pile grew higher and higher, solid proof that Baraka and her siblings had suffered for years. Every burned meal blamed on her, every cruel word, every punishment that had no reason, every scar she hid, all of it was finally being seen. As she looked at the stack of evidence on the table, Baraka felt a strange mix of fear and strength. Her father had always acted like he was untouchable, like no one would ever believe a word against him. But now, for the first time, she held something powerful, truth. And truth didn't need permission to speak. Baraka took a deep breath. Her hands were still shaking, but her heart was steady. This was the moment everything would change. Not just for her, but for her siblings too. She was no longer the scared girl who stayed quiet. She was the one who would finally end the cycle. And as her uncle packed the documents into a folder, Baraka whispered to herself that this time, she wasn't running. This time, she was fighting back. On Christmas morning, the air outside the house felt cold, but Baraka's heart was steady as she walked toward the front door with her uncle beside her, and Lorado holding her hand tightly. She had imagined this moment so many times, sometimes with fear, sometimes with anger, but today she felt something new, calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally know who you are, and what you deserve. When she stepped inside, the whole family froze. Her stepmother's eyes widened. Her siblings gasped softly, and her father stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. He looked shocked, as if he never expected Baraka to ever return, especially not standing tall and confident. For a moment no one said anything. The silence felt heavy. Then her father tried to shout, raising his voice the same way he always had to scare her. But this time Baraka didn't flinch. She stepped forward and spoke before he could finish a single word. Her voice was calm, clear, and stronger than he had ever heard it. "You told me that disappearing would be a gift," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "So I left, and what I found exposed everything you tried to hide." Her father's mouth opened, but no words came out. Baraka slowly placed a folder on the table. Inside were the legal documents, the recordings, her mother's saved notes, the evidence of years of neglect and emotional harm. Her uncle opened the folder so everyone could see, and the room fell into a deeper silence. Her stepmother stepped back, pale. Her father swallowed hard, his face tightening as if the walls were closing around him. Baraka watched him realize that this time he couldn't twist the story. He couldn't lie. He couldn't blame her. Her siblings rushed to her, hugging her tightly. The youngest held her waist and cried into her shirt, whispering, "Please don't leave us again. Take us with you." Baraka's heart ached, but she held them close, promising softly that she wouldn't let them suffer anymore. Her father looked from the documents to Baraka, then to her uncle, and for the first time in her life, she saw fear on his face. Not the kind that makes someone angry, but the kind that comes when a person knows they've lost. Completely. The truth was out. The evidence was real. The power he had held over everyone was gone. Baraka didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She simply stood there, unshaken, and in that moment, her father understood something he never thought possible. He no longer controlled the story. He no longer controlled her. Baraka didn't yell. She didn't call her father names or make him feel small. She didn't need to. She had already won in the quietest, strongest way. Instead, she took a deep breath and let the calm sink into her bones. She looked at her siblings, who were still clinging to her, their eyes full of fear, hope, and trust. That trust had always been hers to protect, and now she could finally do it. She gently packed their small bags, careful to include the clothes, little toys, and blankets they loved. Every item she tucked in felt like a small promise. They were leaving the past behind, stepping into something new. Lorado helped with the last of the bags, smiling softly at Baraka as if to say, "You finally did it." The ride to the cabin was quiet. The snow crunched under the tires, and the soft light of morning reflected off the frozen lake. When they arrived, the cabin looked like a warm hug waiting for them. Baraka opened the door and stepped inside first, letting the cold air out and the warmth in. Her siblings ran ahead, exploring rooms that were theirs now, their laughter echoing off the wooden walls. The shelves were stocked, the blankets were soft, the fire flickered gently. For the first time, Baraka felt what home truly meant: safety, quiet, and love. They celebrated Christmas simply. There were no fancy decorations, no big meals, no judgmental eyes watching them. Instead, there was laughter, shared stories, and a small, homemade meal prepared together. Baraka watched her siblings smile freely, without fear, without hesitation. She felt a weight lift from her chest. The years of blame, the harsh words, the cold stares, they couldn't touch her here. Later, she stepped outside alone for a moment. Snow fell softly, settling on her hair and coat. She looked at the frozen lake, its surface shimmering in the soft morning light. She whispered to herself, almost as if sharing a secret with her mother. I didn't disappear. I just found where I actually belong. For the first time, the world didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel like a place where she had to hide or beg for love. It was hers, her home, her safety, her family. She had built it with her own hands, guided by her mother's love and her own courage. And in that quiet, snowy morning, Baraka finally understood. Peace isn't something given. It's something you create. And now, for the first time, she felt truly free,